Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Mohiz podcast. Today we will be discussing freedom of speech. Despite many believing freedom of speech to be absolute, it's severely multifaceted and the Canadian Charter poses limits to be placed on it under certain circumstances. I believe freedom of speech is a fundamental right that allows individuals to express themselves freely and to see and impart information and ideas of all kinds. But still, an incredibly important fact is that it's not an absolute right and is definitely limited in certain circumstances, such as in cases of hate speech, incitement of violence, or false statements of fact, so essentially misinformation. A quick example of many of you will remember would be misinformation pertaining to the vaccine, which is funny enough still going on. Furthermore, the right to freedom of expression is not absolute because it can conflict with other people's right and values as well, which goes definitely unnoticed, because if you do not genuinely think about this thoroughly, you think freedom of speech is just this absolute thing that you can pretty much just believe in and express yourself in whatever way you want. The Canadian government has the authority to limit speech in certain cases because the Canadian Human Rights Act and the Criminal Code of Canada has provisions that make sure to prohibit hate speech and incitement to violence. If these rules and laws aren't followed, there's a legal punishment to be paid like any other constructed legislated rule for society. It is, of course, like many other scenarios, contingent on the context of how you're breaking the rule and what you're exactly doing, and the impact that the specific freedom of speech may have on others, because different forms of speech is subject to varying levels of protection or restriction. According to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, freedom of speech is defined as, quote, everyone has the following fundamental freedoms: freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of press and other media of communication, end quote. Right and values such as the right of privacy, the right of equality, and the right to safe and a healthy environment intersect with the concept of free speech. The right of marginalized and minority groups, like me being a Muslim and a person of color, must be taken in consideration by the government in order to maintain a tolerant and inclusive society. The Canadian government specifically can very much limit freedom of expression if it can show that the limit is necessary to protect a pressing and substantial objective. So some realistic and reasonable examples of this would be for international security or public safety. In many scenarios, like the aforementioned initial spike of COVID, the government had to restrict certain types of speech in order to protect national security and public order, because otherwise misinformation can permeate every facet of society, which just wreaks havoc, right? Section 7 of the Charter guarantees the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, which means that freedom of expression cannot be used to justify actions that threaten the physical safety or security of others. So that is out of the equation for free speech absolutism. Changes within communication and technology over the years have created new problems for the concept of what we call free speech as well. It has led to cyberbullying, online harassment, and the spread of misinformation. Some places on the internet are completely unmoderated, so you'll find quote-unquote absolute free speech there, but obviously accessing places like that undoubtedly leads to potential legal repercussions. What constitutes hate speech, false information, and the incitement of violence changes over time as well, since those topics aren't as black and white on the surface level. What is considered false information in Japan isn't the same as Canada, for example. So all in all, freedom of speech is most definitely an extremely complex and multifaceted concept that encompasses a wide range of rights and interests people have been arguing over for decades now. There has been many legal disputes over what I covered in this short podcast, but it's important to recognize that the government has the authority to limit speech in certain cases to protect the rights and values of individuals. Despite the changes in communication because of the rapid technological age we live in, it has created new problems for the concept of free speech. Nonetheless, the rights and values of people must be taken into consideration to maintain a tolerant and inclusive society, which can otherwise be severely undermined. While freedom of speech is protected under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it is not an absolute right and forever will be subject to reasonable restrictions. Thanks for checking out the Mohiz podcast. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Bye bye.